Welcome to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society, whose mission is creating unity through music. And today, I'm at the Silver Spring Blues Festival, and playing soon will be a fabulous singer and musician who has taken a little bit of time to be able to talk with me. Ms. Deletta Gillespie, thanks very much for being here, Deletta.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I know of you and have seen you perform and all at Blues Week, Davis and Elkins College, Elkins, West Virginia. It's a special place, and you have been out there singing and really doing your thing in just amazing ways. And I just would love to be able to talk a little bit about music in your life. When do you have early memories of when you first were singing or playing with music? With the music in your family or through the church? How did music kind of come to be a big part of your life?
All of the above, actually. Both my parents were musicians. My mother played for the bands, a lot of well-known bands in the 50s, such as the Ink Spots and the Shirelles.
Wow.
She played, my mom actually played 18 instruments herself.
Oh, my goodness.
But her specialty, she was a marching band and played the bells and all that stuff. But her specialty was organ, and followed up by that was piano. So there was always music in the house. My dad he played upright bass, and he played in the U.S. Army bands.
Whoa.
And so there was just music all around the house, all kinds of music, all the time. In fact, the TV was sort of a dust collector, except for Sundays for football games. But the rest of the time, it was just music. We'd be in the car, and Mother's favorite game was to change the channel. So we got a little bit of everything. And she was also the director of music, or the minister of music, at every church we ever went to. Mm-hmm. So I was expected to sing in the choir, and my first memories of singing outside the house were in the tot choir in church on Sunday mornings and rehearsals on Thursdays. And then my mother also, in addition to the church, she was still a gigging musician. She straddled the fence between the sacred and the secular. And so during the summertime, many years she went on the road. And in fact, from the time I was, I guess, about 6.5 or 7 to the time I was about 8, she was on the road. And so for most of that time she was stationed. I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So most of the time she was stationed. She was in Kansas City. And so we would ride the train. My brother and I have a brother that's 2 years younger than me. We would ride or catch the train to be with her during summertime in Kansas City. And she put us in her show. So we'd hang out in the kitchen because we weren't allowed to be in the nightclub, we were kids. I think I was 6 years old. But we would hang out in the kitchen until it was our time to go on stage. And my brother would do his little act and I would sing, and that was it. So I've just been in music all my life. I did not choose to make a living at it or do it as my vocation, avocation. It chose me. I actually completely went in a different direction with journalism. I attended the University of Oklahoma and studied radio, TV, and film, and that was what I intended to do. But when I got out and got into the work world, and in Oklahoma you're chasing tornadoes or writing obituaries, or I would get a feature every now and then. It was really difficult to find. That's when journalism was the occupation. So I was on a waiting list for almost 2 years to run a camera for the 6 o'clock news. So at that time I said, well, maybe I should do something else. So I ended up getting married, moved to Seattle.
Great city.
And it's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And I ended up there for a year working for the Seattle Community College District, and just bored out of my mind. And I just said, well, what are you going to do with your life, And I said, well, the only other thing I really want to do right now is music.
Nice.
So Reader's Digest version, there's a lot of stuff in between, but when I made the decision to do this, I decided that I wanted to go back to school and get a proper foundation for it. And so I ended up at a little community college just outside of Seattle, but they had a conservatory program.
Nice.
And so I ended up being, from 9 to 4 every day, dance, music, theater.
Wow, I want to go do that.
Yeah, hello. So I ended up studying musical theater performance, and so that began my career, if you will. And then, of course, less than 2 years after that, I was cruising around the Caribbean on the Royal Caribbean Cruise Line. So that's how it happened.
Wow, that's great. Well, you really, had some great music in your life. Really got a good start with that. My
there
goodness.
Was everything. And Mother would take us to the symphony and like have us name all the instruments and listen for their sounds. And then, of course, my joke, I have a show called Panties Up, Dress Down, Things My Mama Used to Say. It's also a book.
I know. I saw that. That's great.
Yeah, well, the book came out of the show because there's only so much you can do in 90 minutes. But there's a chapter in it that's called, and a segment in the show that's called Can Never Have Too Much Religion. And that was because my mother dragged us to every church she played at because her being the specialist on the organ. So I tell people that by the time I was like 9 or 10 years old, I'd been to almost every church there was known to man. And then at 12, I had a crisis of faith. I didn't know what to believe in because I'd been to so many different churches.
Right.
So that was my background. That got me started. And then when I was able, like I said, the cruise lines, when I was in Seattle, met some amazing musicians who travel the world and do this thing for a living, and they just took me under their wing. So I'd finish a show, maybe 10:30, 11 o'clock on a Friday, and then they'd scoop me up, and then we'd go to a late night jam session or whatever, and then we'd end up bowling at 5 o'clock in the morning, but we'd be still talking music the whole time. So I was just immersed in this world of music during that time and then afterwards. So it's just it chose me.
And so, I mean, even as a youngster, you were really seeing people in audiences, the way they react to music, what it sort of does for people.
Oh yeah.
What is that? What's going on with
music
from your observation?
Music is a gift from God, the spirit world, whatever, creator, universe, whatever your language is for that. I truly believe that. And so anytime you open your mouth to sing or to play an instrument, I consider it not only worship, but I consider that you're changing the vibrational frequency of wherever you are. And it can go either way, that energy is neutral. So you can apply it positively and you can apply it negatively. But my own experiences are that it's really positive. And on Sunday mornings, to see someone who comes in, a bit downtrodden or whatever, and you sing a couple of songs and they walk out floating, their feet aren't touching the ground. Or some of the work that I do personally, I've worked with organizations in Baltimore that provide support, long-term care and support for survivors of human trafficking. And in fact, my first and only CD, I'm working on that this year, trying to get another one out. But I pledged to donate a certain amount of funds from the sale of the CD to this organization. And not only that, I was really fortunate that when I did my CD release show, that we had several of the women who were residents at that facility were also part of the show.
Oh, nice.
And just to see their self-esteem rise and for them to really, get engaged and involved was really, really positive. One of the songs I'm going to do in the show today, it knocked me out. I was watching television and the Dalai Lama was on. And this phrase, do no harm, just stuck with me. And I was really moved by that. And I went back to my desk and was doing schoolwork. And the impression made upon me was go right. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do it later, right? No, go right. So I went to my keyboard. And 45 minutes later, I had a song. It was called If You Loved Yourself, You'll Do No Harm. And interestingly enough, I've released several singles off the CD to the Indie Music Network and some other global music channels. And that one gets more plays and likes than anything else I release. So it's touching people. And I just believe that we have, as artists in general, I believe that it really is part of our responsibility to let the rest of the world know what's going on and to provide insight. I don't know that anybody has any answers, but I think one of the most important things is to just to be a vehicle for information at the very least.
Yeah, and music doesn't only just bring information, it brings the feeling, the positivity.
Absolutely.
So many amazing things. I mean, I know my experience with music, obviously, like everybody on the planet. I feel like I could interview everybody on the planet for this podcast because everybody would have a story about music, but it's just amazing.
And that's some of my favorite songs that struck me, or that, like, people always ask me, do you have a favorite song? And I can't say that I do, but if you ask me about an impactful song that I love, I can say, there are several things. Growing up, Mahalia Jackson's something about Trouble in the World. There was Joni Mitchell, a wonderful song called Cherokee Louise off one of her CDs. I can't remember the name of it. Long Ride Home. And I'm listening to the groove, and it's just this funky little kind of thing, right? And I'm getting into it. And then I'm sort of, learning the words. And then I got to this one line, and it's like, oh my God, no, wait a minute. It can't be that. And then I had to sit back and say, wow, she's talking about incest. And I'm just grooving, and she's telling this little girl's story and I just like, wow, it just blew my mind. Janet Jackson, State of the World, her Rhythm Nation 1814, just really talking about those issues.
Our friend Gay Degbalola has a song, Forgiveness, about that same topic. First time I heard that song, my wife and I were sitting down, and we just were completely blown away, crying by this song and what she was saying.
So, like I said, I don't know that it provides answers, but I do know that it can really inspire people to do something. And that just reminds me, Christian artist Matthew Sweet, I am director of music at the Centers for Spiritual Living in D.C. And one of the songs that gets requested quite a bit is a song by Matthew Sweet called Do Something. And the lyrics go something along, I asked God why, I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember all the lyrics, but the paraphrasing is, God, you see all these problems around, why don't you do something? And God says, I did, I created you.
That's for sure. So we've got to do something.
Yeah.
Well, a question, because I have seen you perform, and you just put it out there, big time. It's all out. You're serving it up. I mean, where does that come from? How do you grab it, or how do you let it come to you? It just, for aspiring musicians or for people, I talk with people. They say, "Oh, I don't have any musical talent." I say, "That's not right."
Well, I think we all have gifts, and everybody can sing. Now, whether or not if you're planning on being a Grammy Award-winning artist, that's a different story. But the gift of voice and the gift of music, I've worked as a vocal coach. I've worked with people who were told as children that they should never, don't sing, just don't open your mouths. And the first time they can sing something that sounds relatively beautiful and they're free, they literally break down in tears. They blubber like babies because all of that negativity around that memory gets released. So there's power there. So I say, sing. There's also this whole genre that's really becoming more popular about healing through music, like literally sound healing. Like you can literally, and I know because I've done it, you can chant or hum at certain notes on the scale, which release certain frequencies in the body, and you can literally hum or sing your pain away.
Wow, that's profound, and I believe it too.
And science is proving that you absolutely can do that. So, so I just think that music is a gift, period, and it's not about getting on the stage. I think about ancestral African music practices where everybody sang, everybody dances. It's not how good are you or can you be on stage. It's part of community, it's part of joy, it's part of celebration and merrymaking, and it's a part of daily life. And so I think we all can do that, and I think that that's a positive. As far as what I do, first of all, I know that just being on stage is a gift. It's just a gift, and that's where I feel most at home at, is on stage. So it's like,
beautiful.
When I'm on stage, it's like, it's my party, this is my office, and you're welcome to come along. I'm going to have a good time regardless, okay? So come on along for the fun. And the other thing is, I used to sort of, shirk away from it. Oh, I don't want to be center stage. I still am not crazy about, it's like, yes, I'm on stage. It's not an ego-driven thing. It's just, oh boy, I get to do this again, And so I also believe that if you're on stage, then you have a responsibility and an obligation to give it your all. And that's what I do. I just leave it on the floor. And so it's not about upstaging anybody or anything like that. That's furthest from it. I love a wonderful prayer by Mary Ann Williamson.
Yes, I know her.
And
know of her.
Right,
yes.
know of her, right. And one of her prayers, and my favorite prayers of her, and I say this silently to myself every time I step on stage, and it's, "Dear God, use me that I might know the joy of being used by you."
Ooh. Pretty profound.
That's the beginning and the end of it for me.
So, what can we do to help use this unbelievable power of music in our lives? We have such a mess going on in the world, politically, financially. People are hurting, and I just don't think people really want to do all that. They really want to hang out with friends, and
they're looking for a way out. People really are looking for. You can go to HGTV and some of these other shows where people are like tiny houses. People are getting off the grid. They've had enough. And so I just think I refer back to West African musical practices, of course, that being my lineage, but also any other ancestral music practice. And just borrowing from that. I think every culture, I think in the States we're kind of removed from a lot of our cultural practices, but everyone has, I'm a huge soccer fan. Okay, we call it soccer here. I call it football. I think it really is football. You don't touch it with your hands, right?
It's true.
And it's global. But I think about football. And in the stands, do you hear those people?
I hear them.
Ole, 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 or whatever their chant is for their team. They're singing, "You'll never walk alone." Are you kidding me? That's just adding to the energy of that whole spectacle. And I love that. So sing. I just say sing. There are so many song circles that are opening up. Leah Gilmore, I don't know if you're familiar with her, wonderful blues artist and friend, and she has a monthly sing-along that she does, and community sing is what she calls it, and people just show up just to sing, and they come in feeling rather down sometimes, or had a rough day or week at work, and then come out feeling so much better about life. Paris Kern is another one in Baltimore area that does the same thing. So I just say, just sing. Just James, what's his name? Late Night Show. I'm drawing a blank on his last name. Corden. The whole karaoke carpool.
Yes.
I remember traveling with the Monument Quilt. The Monument Quilt is a project by Force in Baltimore, where they are creating they work to create public healing spaces for survivors of sexual assault and violence, domestic violence. And I've traveled to Native American reservation tribal lands. I've traveled to colleges around the country with this group, and we it's a huge quilt display basically, and people from all over the country can donate squares to the quilt with the eventual aim of having it on the National Mall in about a year or so. But when you have those quilts in the back of the van with you, and you know that each one of those squares is someone's story of survival, it can be a really heavy thing. So the one thing we did was each person who was in the van got to be DJ for a certain number of hours behind the wheel. And we would sing along to everything. And I guarantee you the mood just lifted, the energy shifted. People were able to go into planning mode as opposed to, oh God, that was so tough. So
yes.
I just said, just sing. It doesn't cost you anything. And move that energy, and then be open to what shows up afterward. If you get a notion to call a friend, if you get the idea to scribble down your next song, if you get the idea to go volunteer somewhere, then do that. Just follow the impulses that come behind that. It's a spiritual practice. I believe that very truly. It's a spiritual practice.
Oh, Deletta, so I'm inspired just listening to you, I think the idea of, try to find your musical lineage, your musical roots, and just sing sounds like great advice. And man, we need a lot more Deletta Gillespies around the world. And I know you got to go for your gig, but thank you so much for taking the time and really talking with me. And
it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Great. Appreciate it. You've been listening to Planetary Gig Talk, Tales of Music and Magic. I'm your host, Jefferson Glassy, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gig Society. We talk with musicians and others about the power of music and how we can use music to help create a better world. Please check out our website, www.planetarygigs.org, for information about some of the organizations promoting music and musicians, resources about the power of music, books, movies, articles, including new research on music and the brain. We welcome your support. The Planetary Gig Society is a Section 501c3 charitable organization, and you can donate on the website. You also can receive a free email signature block demonstrating your support for Planetary Gig Society. Please follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Planetary Gigs. And we want to thank fabulous musician and teacher Eric Weinberg of Little Eric Studios for the Planetary Gig Talk music titled Chill Kid, It's Saul. So please check out Planetary Gig Talk on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Subscribe and hear all the upcoming episodes. Thanks very much.